Hi guys, so I only get 5 minutes per video, so I'll make this short and break it into sections. So this is an overview of Charge of the Light Brigade. Before you get started, you do need your colours and your anthology. Okay, so we're going to start with a bit of an overview. This is your macro. Make sure that you pause if you don't get the notes here. So the things you need to know is this poem is a narrative poem. That means it tells a story. And the other thing to note here is that it uses refrain. So that's a line repeated at the end of each stanza. You'll notice that they come up quite a lot in quite a few poems. So worth noting when you've got to compare. The structure is triadic, tri meaning three. So there is a really strong structure in terms of the beats here. So it's to represent the cavalry, the brigade charging into battle. The focus of this poem, the intention, is all about the bravery and how courageous the soldiers are. And it's set during the Crimean War, and it's a very specific battle that it's focusing on with regards to 600 soldiers and Lord Raglan's orders. And the tone of this is about courage, bravery, being patriotic, and heroicism. Okay, so a little bit of overview of Lord Alfred Tennyson, things that you do need to know. So this poem was written in 1854 during the Crimean War. Now he was a poet laureate. Essentially what that means is he's appointed by the government, and his role is to write for big occasions and government events. So have a think about how that impacts the messages that go behind his poems. Obviously they've almost been like seal stamped and okayed by the government. So a little bit of background for you, and I've highlighted in red some of the things you need to know. So the Charge of the Light Brigade is about this massive disastrous event, really. It is seen as quite incompetence of the British military within the Crimean War, which was between Turkey and Russia. So our involvement is seen quite negatively in the history books. And the only person really remembered is Florence Nightingale. So this poem here focuses very much on the tactical mistakes that are made. And in this poem, very specifically, it's about Lord Raglan's orders that were acted upon. So he was like desperate to fight off the Russians. So he sent out this order which was acted upon. And these men went in completely the wrong direction following his orders. So it was a huge mistake. So this poem focuses on the 600 soldiers going into this valley of death, essentially. So imagine a valley, two sharp sides you can't, once you're in, you can't get out. So, inescapable, certain death. But they're not thinking about that. This poem focuses very much on them obeying the order, the command, and just charging the enemy forces because that's their job. And like I said, this whole poem is set on the fact that these were soldiers with sabres, swords, and horses going up against cannons. So it was definite death for them, and it's meant to show how courageous they were, knowing they were going into that. So it's meant to be quite a moving tribute to the brigade, to the cavalry, knowing they were going to battle to die and how heroic they were, even though they were defeated. And Tennyson was quite on the side of war. He thought it was necessary. He thought it was just. And he's glorifying war, which is quite opposite to a lot of the poems like Wilfred Owen in Exposure and The Man He Killed, for example. So this poem uses an awful lot of features that focus on the movement and the sounds to really get you into the story, the narrative of this battle. And like I said before, it uses a triadic structure for the horse's hooves. The poem doesn't speak about like individuals like they do in Man He Killed and Exposure. It uses a lot of collective nouns, talks about like troops and the brigade and the cavalry, and we use these words to represent like our group of people. Maybe it is all about like the strength in a group, perhaps as its use, but it is worth noting those as we go through. And it doesn't really focus on the fact that Lord Raglan messed up massively. Okay, I'm going to pause there, and the second video will look at some of the analysis that you need to pick up on.